Good morning. It is 10:02 a.m. on Saturday, July 28th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Officially my first day of vacation. I haven't left yet. I'm flying out tomorrow, but I am, sort of officially officially on my vacation week now, which is nice. Nice. But it's also a Saturday, and that means that I'm continuing my rewatch of the entire series of The Venture Brothers before the new season comes out on August 5th. Today I'm talking about season 5, and in a sort of surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise to myself, I realized yesterday that I hadn't watched any of the season yet, and so I watched the entirety of season 5 last night. Now, fortunately, season 5 is actually shorter than some of the previous seasons. I talked about that a little bit, that season 4 was long enough that it was almost like 2 seasons worth of season 5 and 6. The goal, I think, was the shorter seasons can come more frequently. And it seems like that's was as intended for the first time. Season 5 was in 2013 and 14, and then season 6 was in 2015 and 16. So it was only really a year gap. But then, of course, now season 7 is not starting until well into 2018. So I don't know how well that worked necessarily, but in any event, season 5. Season 5 really continues where season 4 left off, which was to give all the main characters sort of a springing off point to really start doing something different and let everybody move past their initial trope starting point and do something new of their own. I think probably if I think about it, I think the only character that doesn't really get much of a growth arc in this season is Rusty, Venture himself, the Dr. Venture of this particular family. He's still kind of stuck in a lot of ways, and everything else is sort of changing around him. What we start with is the first episode of this season, called "What Color Is Your Clean Suit?" Does have him kind of leaning in to some of the behavior we might have expected from earlier seasons, where he was basically trying to catch up for this contract he had already promised, realizing he's way behind, and essentially shanghaiing. I shouldn't say that. The enlisting a whole bunch of college students as to work as interns, but not taking care for their safety at all, and so ending up with a whole bunch of mutations that threaten to ruin everything, but do actually complete the race shield. And introducing, I think, one of my favorite one-shot characters, that is this student that Dean kind of falls in love with as she is, even though she ends up getting mutated and then forgetting the whole thing. But she just, this student with her glasses, she just has this funny kind of way of speaking. Like when she is removing the top half of her jumpsuit in order to demonstrate that she has grown 2 new arms at her waist, she's just like opening it up and saying, "All right, now I'm removing my jumpsuit. This might seem like it's going to be a sexual thing. It's not." It's just funny. So he's kind of still freewheeling in this, not knowing what his place is, trying to still be the super scientist, but really still struggling with being in the shadow of his brother. And I don't know that he really ends up moving past that in this season, but almost everyone else has a lot going on in terms of like character development. For one, Brock is back in the OSI official now, and with Hunter, and working with Shore Leave a lot, which is great because Shore Leave is just such a fun character. And his big episode this season, I Love You, OSI Love You, also features Molotov again. And after the heartbreak at the end of the last season, having it turn out again, oh no, she's actually a double agent. Now she's working for us, is something, just as Brock had kind of come to peace with the idea that he was going to have to kill her, he's really struggling there. So there's some interesting stuff going on there. We also get Hank and Dean, obviously each having their own thing. We get Dean undergoing essentially a season-long existential crisis that is kind of tied to the Halloween special, which is it's a special that has it's a little bit tricky because it's not 100% clear where in the continuity it's supposed to occur, because it features Dean being told that he's a clone for the first time, which we don't see in the regular season, but he is also already wearing his black clean suit or speed suit, and has his hair, everything, so which we had kind of assumed that some of that was because of his discovery. So it's a little bit, the continuity is a little muddled there, and I think, if I recall correctly, I didn't watch the commentary this time, but I believe the commentary of that special actually acknowledges that. But we also, so we have Dean going through this whole, like goth rebellious teen phase, due to just this realization: I'm a clone. I'm not the original or the real me, and what does that mean? And then we have Hank, of course, who is doing the band thing, and also leaning into the whole Hank Co. idea of running this little store that, it has big business when there's all those interns around. But him kind of growing into being his own man. And of course we have, when we say his own man, we have a 3-episode or so arc where he's wearing this power armor suit that's clearly meant for a woman. And so he has the female profile and the female body language and everything while he's wearing this thing before it's eventually stolen from him. And that's kind of an interesting sort of take on it, just in the non-toxic masculinity sense, which is just that, he is interested in what the armor can do and doesn't really particularly mind that it's, that it makes his body shaped like a woman while he's wearing, the profile of it and all. And that's kind of interesting. We also have Sergeant Hatred, or Vatred now, because he has had the H tattoo on his face changed to a V, which looks ridiculous because it's almost like it's a mustache under his nose. And his whole deal where he's increasingly feeling, now that he's grown breasts because of the medication that he is taking to help him curb his unnatural urges, which he's started to believe is maybe all related to experiments done on him. And he is just feeling increasingly like he is not, he's not feeling valued, and he's also feeling like maybe he's been mistreated in ways that he didn't fully really comprehend before, and starting to feel frustrated about all of that, and that leads to a season-ending sort of rampage that is not clear at this point how dramatic the after effects will be, but he certainly gets mad about it. And then we have Gary, who at the end of last season quit being the Monarch's henchman and decided to join up and be Sphinx, only to have Sphinx suddenly turn into nothing anymore because OSI is back. And so he's doing Sphinx all by himself until the actual original Team Sphinx tries to take over with a coup, and then it all gets blown up, and then he's just basically living in the Venture compound yard for a while until we see him come back. And I think it's it's interesting and feels real, like character development, but it also does feel a little bit like a step back. Like it was probably good for Gary to break free from that whole situation, but then he failed to really find somewhere else to be. Like he's landed in a couple places that didn't last, and now he's retreating back to what he knows, which is probably a regression and not healthy. But yeah, who's healthy in this show? And we have the Monarch and Doctor Mrs. the Monarch, who Dr. Mrs. the Monarch is clearly starting to climb the rungs of the ladder in the Guild of Calamitous Intent, whereas the Monarch is kind of, he's still sort of spinning his wheels, but he's getting to a point where his hatred of Dr. Venture doesn't feel quite the same, and that kind of culminates in an episode where he's infiltrated the compound, and he finds an old photo that seems to show himself and Rusty Venture as young children playing together, and he doesn't remember any of that, and it's sort of thrown him into a little bit of a tailspin. He doesn't know what to make of it. And that's something we continue to explore next season. But then, of course, we also finished the season with Dr. Mrs. the Monarch being made one of the new members of the Council of 13 for the Guild. And so her career is advancing, and that also gives him stress. Lots of stuff going on, and it's a very funny season. And it's interesting, I kind of said this when I talked last week about season 4, but when I think of the series in the abstract, I tend to remember the earlier seasons more, maybe just because I've seen them more often. As I rewatch various bits, I rewatch those and think of them, but it's also nice to have the story continue to evolve. So, that's it for season 5. I'm going to be on vacation this week, and I'm not 100% sure if I will be able to I'm going to have to figure something out for how to do the rewatch of season 6 because I'll be out of state, but I'll figure out. I'll make something work because August 5th is when it's back. So I'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes when I continue my rewatch of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya.